It's all about politicking. It's all about what is happening in African politics. It's all about you and I, because we are in this continent. Today is all about our position in African politics. Yes, Benin Republic Prime Minister sentenced an opposition leader to 20 years in prison. They said she was charged for terrorism. Some of you know that, look, this is not what this is all about. There are more to this. There are more behind this. If you take a look at the history of Africa as a continent, you get to hear about vibrant opposition fighting against the government of the day. All of a sudden, once they get to that power, what do you think happens? They become maybe overload. They'll not start being, hassled by another opposition. It's like, a chain of endless reactions. Not to worry. With me here in the studio to talk about this, I have a clergyman, a political analyst, public affairs commentator. Join me to welcome Reverend Humphrey Arega. Reverend, welcome to Africa Discourse. I appreciate your coming.
Compliment of the season.
Same to you, Reverend.
My pleasure.
All right. Were you surprised when the news filtered into the atmosphere that an opposition leader was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment by the Prime Minister in Benin Republic? What was your reaction?
Well, like in this situation, I just keep telling everybody, what happens in Africa and the world, I'm not really surprised as about what happens, because history is very much in play here. The fact that, especially in African so-called democracies, we really do not understand or practice or agree to practice democracy as a form of governance. I've said it in several other places that African politicians still have the mentality of our despotic monarchs, who believes in the Lord and the servants. In the African traditional setting, the king is the law, is the all in all. He holds the life of men and women in their hands, and whoever opposes does that at his or her own peril. But yet we're supposed to be talking about democracy in our modern world, knowing that Africa is not a secluded environment from the world. One of the surprising things for me about this is that some of those who are behaving as despots today have taste of democratic environments. They either studied there or they do something there that exposes them to what democracy is all about. And unfortunately, by the time they land in the atmosphere of the African space, whatever they think they have learned in the developed societies of democracies just feathers away, and we are back to our crude mentality system. So I'm not too surprised, just that I get a little bit offended when I see these kind of things. You wonder why Africans have remained underdeveloped. Development is not about power. Development is about the mind. That's why they said it is ideas that rule the world.
Yeah.
But we are using crude methods and powers to rule Africa, and so development of course cannot take place.
Right.
And that's why we are still where we are. Blessed with a lot of resources, human and material, yet very poor. That is an irony. But that's because greatness and productivity lies squarely on leadership. So if you have a poor leadership mentality, you can't grow beyond who you are. And that's why the African society is where we are. We are too crude in the fact that we assume that power is all it takes. But when you muzzle ideas, you are bound to live in the jungle. Yeah. And in the jungle, development is not an idea. So I'm not too shocked. Just like you said, some of those who are doing these things were once in opposition. And you give them a space. All they see is that Leopards don't change their skin. You can change space. You can change environment. But the inner heart of the man is not changed. So I'm not surprised, but I'm a little bit disillusioned because what they have just done is to muzzle the growth that would have taken place in that country. And it's a sad commentary.
All right, it's a sad commentary. Well, like what you said in course of your analysis, you said, look, these persons were one time in opposition, though I said that also in course of opening this discussion, but take a look at it from one angle. Why this mentality haven't gone through that position of being an opposition or being in an opposition whereby you tend to criticize the government, all of a sudden you become what they criticize in African politics?
Well, I think the problem we have is that the developed mind of the African people is a little bit in the myopic stage. Most of the persons do not really have an open developed mind. My lecturer who taught me in my A-level said you can go to school, you have a degree, but that doesn't mean you're educated. Education is a cultural reorientation of the mind. That, of course, most or some of the African leaders have refused to exhibit. We have a few of them that have exhibited such things, like Nelson Mandela. Like, I like somebody like Thomas Sankara those days. See, but they don't last. That's because majority of the people who you are supposed to be looking after do not even understand the act of benevolence. You see, most of the African, like I said, we are coming from a slave mentality where the king does no wrong. So anyone who opposes the king is gone. And you see that even in our political environment, most of our leaders hire political thugs around themselves that helps them to eliminate whoever wants to rise as opposed. And who are these people? They are supposed to be young persons. And until we change our orientation and mentality and begin to see ourselves as endowed individuals whose contribution is essential for the growth of our nation, there's no one man that has all the intellectual ability to develop a nation. It's not. You can't even develop yourself. You need other people's inputs. Unfortunately, men who are ignorant do not want to hear superior arguments. My late Archbishop said, it's the empty drum that makes the loudest noise. Because when the drum is full, you barely hear the sound. Okay, and that's where we are. It is when people are not secure in themselves that they are offended by other people's superior intelligence. Unfortunately, too, sometimes the opposition do not really understand what opposition is all about. Opposition is not just to oppose and to defy government. It's supposed to be an alternative government, alternative intellectual bank, where others can see if there's something wrong, you prefer a solution that can be an alternative to what is happening, and you are waiting for the opportunity to have that time. Not to lord it over, but to make sure that the development that is needed is brought about by the individuals. Unfortunately, we in the African setting do not seem to appreciate that. Well, I'm not even saying in the African context is also becoming a loose word, because even in the Western world, we are seeing a lot of it happening too. So humanity itself has that greedy mind of thinking that he's the only one. But it takes a culturally oriented individual to understand that in the council of many, safety is assured. You jail a man for 20 years and fabricate, and again, this is the problem I have with the African context. You fabricate things for the judiciary to note and maybe send the person to jail. You think you have done it legally. But everybody who knows, even the judiciary knows, that these things that have been said about this man is not correct. Yet, out of fear of the power of the executive, some judgments are given and done. So that goes to show that even those who are supposed to be intellectually available to interpret and to give, they said, judiciary is the last hope of the common man. If you can no longer find succor in the judiciary, and I told some person the other time, they need to remove the blindfolding in the emblem at the judiciary, because the law now sees and selects. Before, we are told that the law does not look at anybody. It's by the facts of the case before him or her having been established by every indices. But that today no longer prevails. So man is getting back to his brutal stage, which is going backwards. And I hope that one day Africa will be redeemed from this kind of brutal life to a civilized way of doing things.
All right. Now, you use the word fabricate. You know, how will I put it now? Fabricate stories or fabricate reports or any news against the opposition just to call out that particular personality. But that seems to be the case of Grace in Benin Republic. She was one time in the government. All of a sudden, she went out of the government, started bringing out the ills of the government. All of a sudden, she was, you know, said to be a terrorist, that she was involved in terrorism. She was involved in so many despicable things against the state of the Republic of Benin. Now, take a look at the word fabrication. I mean, but in foreign crimes, let's take a look at the West right now. If someone has been accused of something, there is a process of investigation, digging deep into the issue to find out if that person is guilty or not. How come it's different in this case?
Well, like I said, in Africa, most of the African leaders control the apparatus of governance and justice. You are asking a man to investigate himself. The president or the prime minister is in charge of the police, who you ask to go and investigate. It's the police that will investigate you. It's the police that will take you to court. Now, in most cases, the person who you are taking to court do not even have access to the information needed. Everything is blocked. You are saying, this is a lady who has been in government. While she was in government, you didn't accuse her of anything. But the moment she stepped out and said, look, whatever is happening, you know, the problem is that no leader wants to be exposed. He feels endangered by the exposition of other persons who knows. And so the only way you can keep yourself safe is to lock the person up, out of circulation, so that you cannot have your peace. But I, as a Christian, I believe that no matter how much you close fast, it will come up one day. We have also seen that those who put people to jail have themselves gone to jail. Because he will not, the prime minister will not be there for life, even though we have life prime ministers and presidents in Africa. But one day something must happen, you know. And he will, if he has conscience, and this is where I keep also talking about persons. If you have conscience and you are sending somebody to jail for what you know was wrong, how will you sleep with your conscience? That somebody, just because he opposes you, he has become an enemy. The word terrorist is a word that is heavy in our mouth. It is something that is dangerous. For you to call somebody a terrorist, terrorism is not a one-man's act. The person must have had affinity with other dangerous environments that has a grave danger to the life and property of the nation. Of what danger was that lady to Benin Republic? Just because he's exposing the things that is holding back the growth of the people, to you he's a terrorist, not to the nation. But then I ask myself a question. Where are the lawyer advocates in nations? Where are the judges with morality to say, look, yes, you may be the head of government, but this fast before us. We saw that play out in America. And justice prevails. Once justice is allowed, and that's why Africans do not allow the judiciary to be independent. Because once you have an independent judiciary, it is difficult for executive to be rascal. But African leaders do not want to be checked. So they pocket both the parliament and the judiciary with bribery and corruption. And because nobody wants to suffer, these are some of the issues. I've also said one of the things I've come to establish is the fact that the African family system makes a lot of things difficult for the average African leaders. I'm not talking of governments. Somebody will tell you, look, you are the live wire of our family. You cannot afford to be opposing government all the time. Play it cool. So they're talking of how they will survive. But it's somebody else's family that you are put in danger. So I want to believe that African leaders should begin to rethink of themselves. That we all are human beings. We have our time. But we all will report back to God for whatever we have done.
All right. Now, why is this squash the opposition mentality in African politics predominant?
Yes, again, because we are not allowing our ideas to rule. We are allowing our brute force to rule. We see ourselves, the African leaders see themselves as untouchable. So when somebody rises up to say, look, no, this is not, he sees that challenge as an insult and an affront on his own personality. And so the person must go down. And that in itself is a sign of poverty of the mind. Because that a man opposes you shouldn't reduce you to, it should encourage you to improve yourself, because you are not a perfect being. You don't have all the knowledge. So if somebody else brings a thought that is not very much in line with you, sit down to think about it. You must not take the ideas. You must not even respond to it, but allow people to express themselves. And once people are able to express themselves, they are less affronted to you, because they know that if they say something, you look at it and find the best of it. If not, you leave it. Because I say you are bad doesn't mean you are bad until you produce a bad nature for people to see. So if you are supposed to improve an economy and the economy is going down, and somebody is saying, look, you are not doing well in this area, you should have done it this way, and you say, oh, you are talking to me, because that becomes, to me, I keep saying that it is the poverty mentality of the mind that makes a man feel pompous and proud in ignorance. And that's why the African nation is not growing. We have all it takes to grow, but yet we are not, because we have refused to allow others to contribute. We put yes men around us as leaders. And yes men has never helped a nation to grow. No. You look at France. Macron was a member of a party. He felt not too comfortable. He left, formed another party of it, and became prime minister. That's how some leaders have emerged. Because there are times you come to a point, your thinking capacity have a stall. You need somebody else to help you open it up. And every nation is endowed with men and women to help get the nation to where they should be.
All right. Every nation is endowed with men and women to help get the nation to where it ought to be. Now, some are saying with this act by the Prime Minister in Benin Republic, They have succeeded in strangling democracy, dragging it 20 steps backwards. How do you feel about this outcry, or this outburst?
That's very true, because others will be afraid to make comments, to criticize government, to offer suggestions, because you've seen the lady, just because he offers suggestions, is going to 20 years in prison. Who wants to live in prison? Yeah, you're not just going to prison and they treat you like every other prisoner. You are a danger to the government. So they are going to treat you in a manner that makes you regret ever living as a human being. And nobody wants to have that. Like I said just now, families, she has a family.
Yeah.
That family is devastated right now. Restoring that family will take a lot of things. And there are others who have seen her as a rising star, as somebody they can look up to and believe that there is hope for tomorrow. That light is dimmed. So you have destroyed a lot of hope on a lot of persons who would have contributed to the growth of Benin Republic as a nation. So you are setting it backwards. And some of them will either leave the country and just go somewhere else to go and find their life.
In exile.
In exile. And then the nation is dying in poverty. So we have to think about the actions and reactions of our decisions. It doesn't just end in that woman going to prison. There are a lot of things that have also been imprisoned. A lot of ideas that would have helped that have been imprisoned, and a lot of persons who would have helped that we have put in prison in themselves. You know, and frustration comes into it. Even in government, there are some who would have also loved to say something, though they're in government, but now they can't say it, because they say, if the woman went to jail 20 years, I don't want to go to prison. But you see, nations are not built like that. To me, you see, every time a man or woman suffers for a cause he or she believes, there's always a better tomorrow. Nelson Mandela went to prison. Nobody thought he was going to come out. But he came out and make South Africa a better country. And that's how life should be. Don't be afraid to take punishment for what you believe in. God, who gave you grace and comfort, will comfort you. To me, that period of seclusion will also be a period of relearning for her. Instead of regretting, take her time. You have a lot of books to read. You have a lot of thoughts within yourself and your God. It gives you a time to read, discover yourself. And when you come out, you are coming out a better person.
All right, now if you take a look at the woman in question, Grace, she's got this, backing, so to speak, from the people. Do you see disturbance in Benin Republic? Do you see civil disobedience in Benin Republic occasioned by her sentencing?
Well, there's going to be some pockets of disturbance because people are going to. But, African leaders has a way of crushing the rising of opposition voices. And that's why I feel a little bit apathetic to some issues. The military, the police, seems to forget that their role is not to serve as the president's boy. It's to serve as a vanguard for the nation's upkeep. But in Africa, military, police, others have become subservient to the executive. That is a misnomer.
A misnomer?
Yes. Because it is not the president that pays the bills or the salaries. It is the people. And if the people that pays your bill, you have become an enemy to them, then you are not supposed to be in the place. Okay? The president also is a servant of the people, just like the police and others. So they shouldn't see themselves as doing the bidding of the president to the disadvantage of the people they are supposed to guard against. And that's where we need to look at. Look, again, I keep referring to America, I keep referring to Britain. Look at what has happened in America, for instance. The uprising that took place January this year, there's still a probe going on. And people are telling, look, you were not supposed to take orders from the president. There are constitutional rules that define. You're supposed to guide. You're not supposed to, on the order of one man, destroy a nation. And those who are tempted and are doing it, some of them have been sentenced to prison. Police officers. So these are some of the things. So we need to begin to look at why are we where we are? How should it be? We should learn from others. We should learn from issues. We should learn from situations. We cannot grow in this manner, in this situation, where you see policemen harassing people just for expressing themselves. They have no guns. They have no destructive weapons, just their voice. And you are beating them in such a manner as if they were criminals. No, just to air their voice. And everybody has an inherent right. Even in their constitutions, your fundamental human right of expression, right of association is enshrined. Yet, executives over the countries in Africa just make it difficult for people to exercise their rights. And they use the brutal force of the military and the police that are supposed to be guiding. When there is a rally, it is the duty of the police to make sure it doesn't turn violent. That's their duty. Not to beat them for talking. If somebody says something and you don't like, the Constitution talks about going to court for defamation. Go and prove that what the person said against you is defaming to you. If it is, they give you the benefit of it and you get where you're going. But you cannot be the one defining what the word is and what the punishments are. And that's what African leaders do. They just come up with one word. Oh, the person is a terrorist. What's your definition of being a terrorist? What's the acceptable definition of terrorism? And how has this one fit into it? Nobody asks those questions. Oh, the president said. Right. Before they go to court, there's already a phone call. This person must go to jail. And you ask your question, why 20 years? For saying what? Was he with armed? Was she armed against anybody? What did she bring in foreign mercenaries to the country to overthrow the government? And you are telling her 20 years incarceration.
All right, you just hold on now. We want to go for a break. When we return, we'll continue with this discussion because we want to go beyond the scope right now. Many have this mentality of oppositions in Africa. Some are saying oppositions are there to line up their pockets, that they are in the #1 position in a given country in Africa. All these and more we'll take a look at when we return after this break. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is Africa Discourse, taking a look at the place of opposition in Africa politics. Benin Republic opposition sentence, that is what we are taking a look at. The woman, Erikia Madugo, she was, with the Democrats and she vied for the presidency. That was on April. All of a sudden, she was slammed with the terrorism charge. It took the court in Benin Republic 20 hours, not even days, not even weeks, not even months, to judge her case and found her guilty. And many persons have been talking about this, saying, what did this for the 7-year-old woman? What did she do to the government of Benin Republic? People have been talking about it. People are like saying this may lead to a major unrest in Benin Republic. We're still waiting to see the outcome of the judgment. Now, generally speaking, don't forget I will be here in the studio. He is a clergyman, political analyst, public affairs commentator, Reverend Humphrey Rega, trying to give his own opinions and views pertaining to this particular situation. And from all he has said, it is quite pathetic, really, really pathetic. Reverend, if you take a look at the trend of opposition leaders in Africa, they have one thing at the back of their mind: power. And with this at the back of the mind of the African leaders, they tend to use brute force whenever they get to hear anything about opposition. Why this imbalance? People are thinking that the opposition are there to really make sure that the governance gets to the people, not to line up their own pocket. Why this disparity?
Well, it depends on the interplay of issues. Don't forget that it is often said that power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Hence, the developers of democracy thought it wise to say, let us devolve power into different spheres so there can be check and balance. Human being in itself is very autocratic. And except there is a measured rule to lower such temperaments, we always get to where we are. So that's why you say the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, three equal arms of governance. So that once one person makes a mistake, the other two are able to bring together a semblance of peace. Unfortunately, we also said, people have not, it takes an educated mind to reason, to allow ideas to prevail. Not because of what we are benefit from it, but because of what the people will benefit. Because they said politics is supposed to be a game of the people, for the people and by the people. If that is the case, why is it difficult for Africans to allow the people who allowed you on their behalf to take over the realms of power, not allow the people to have a say in what now goes on? That is the thing that baffles every human thought about what we're talking about. So it is on that note that people have this mentality. Again, the African society have been tribally divided. People look at their tribes and they find that whatever tribe they come from seems to be the dominant tribe. So every other person must be subservient. If any person from another tribe is rising up to take, they see it as an affront. So there's a whole lot of inhibitions within the African structure that the wholeness and oneness that is required for us to move forward is not there. Then, of course, there is this individual greed. Because of the greed of the individuals, they want to have it all. They and their family and their generation should be the only one that have the source of power and wealth to themselves. Every other person must serve them, must bow to them to be able to get anything. Of course, we're talking about, we call it the Commonwealth of Nations.
Of nations.
It is not yours, it's ours. But then, what the African leaders also do not take thought of is that they have a period to live on earth. Whatever you acquire, you can't carry it away. Some leaders have deposited accounts in nations today that their country don't have access to. The resources of the country you are depositing in another country, you cannot have access to it. Your children can't even have access to it. So it becomes another man's property. So we need to tell ourselves that greed is not profitable. Whether it is political power, whether it is economic power, if it is not useful to somebody else, it's of no use. So we have to rethink. Sometimes opposition too have created more problems for themselves because they have not produced ideas as to how to make it better. They are instigating, some of them instigate situations just for them to gain access to power. And they have not been able to do anything to justify why they were in opposition. You see, and until we begin to look at ideas as the basis of our relationship, not power, we'll keep being where we are, underdeveloped. Look at Benin Republic, for instance. Ask yourself the question, what is the economic value of Benin Republic to West Africa as a nation, to Africa as a nation, and to the world? They have enough things to use that only them have that the world would need. It takes a joint effort to bring these things to pass. So let us let us as Africans begin to ask ourselves, why are we where we are? What do I need power for? Is it to better the nation, the country, or the people, or just to make myself the only person? And if you are the only person, how does that help you even to live a life of success? If you are the only person who is wealthy in your community, my bishop said you are relatively poor, because the problem of the community will come to you. When you distribute the wealth among the people, you have peace with yourself, because everybody is contributing to the growth and betterment of tomorrow. So harnessing the best materials and the brains that we have should be the concern of leaders of the African continent to make our nations better, so that we don't become slaves. That's why we are becoming slaves to China, we are becoming slaves to America, we are becoming slaves to Europe. Because we do not have the grace to pull ourselves together and say, well, China wasn't like this years ago. They were as poorer than Africa. But they did something that made themselves grow. They sent their people out, acquired knowledge, came back, and allowed them to utilize that knowledge for the growth of the nation. Today, China is competing as one of the big resources of the world. But yet, they don't have the mineral resources that we have in Africa. So they are coming over to colonize us, to take the resources to develop their place. Not to develop your place, to develop themselves. When the Chinese men had fame in Nigeria, who did they bring? They bring their people. They take your resources, they pay them with your money. And yet, you as citizens do not enjoy the benefit of that resources. All we need is fighting ourselves. So these are the problems.
All right.
And I hope that we begin to learn to ask ourselves, how can I make others part of a building relationship to build a nation? If a nation is built in your time, we keep saying, everybody talking of Nelson Mandela today. Even though he's no longer around, his name remains indelible in the development of South Africa, an African nation.
All right. But can't an opposition leader or member just remain in that position of opposing the negativities of governance other than targeting the #1 seat?
Well, sometimes...
Because take a look at the history of the woman. It was like, you know, with the Democrats, she is, you know, the female opposition leader, Enrique Madugo, that is her name. Must you be the president to do what you ought to do for your country as an opposition?
Yes, sometimes it has to be, because if you are not in a position to effect the things you are talking about, it becomes just talk. If, you see, the problem is that those in leadership do not even take cognizance of the ideas of the opposition, to incorporate it so that it can be, if you had that kind of ideas, to say, look, whether you are in the opposition or you are in governance, we are all a team to build a nation, then everybody will not be looking forward to become president or prime minister. But when you don't have that opportunity to allow your ideas, even though it is affirmed that your ideas are good, then you look for and pray towards being in a position to effect that. And that's why there is this urge for every opposition leader thinking that he has to be in positions of authority to effect the thing. We all don't need to be prime minister to contribute to the effective growth or president of our nation. What stops the prime minister of making the opposition leader as a member of the advisory board to the president?
Well, should be accepted, no, if you know that she's a member of the opposition.
Yes,
don't forget the African mentality.
See, that's the point. That's what we're talking about, mentality. If you see, your disposition matters a lot.
Yeah.
Again, I refer to Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela was being made president, he said, I'm not talking of South Africa for the blacks or South Africa for the whites. I'm talking of South Africa for South Africans. no matter the color or creed you are in. We're trying to build a society where everybody will feel equal, no matter who you are. That's the kind of mentality that African leaders should develop. To say, look, whether you are in opposition or not, you are a member of Republic of Benin as a citizen. And so you contribute to the welfare and the growth of it. Whatever ideas you have, let's table it and look at it. That's how things should work. And of course, it's not happening. You go to African parliaments, you find there's a sharp division as to why things must not work. Again, I refer back to America. Look at the infrastructure bill. At the beginning, you thought, oh, the Republicans will never agree with the Democrats. But at the end of the day, because the citizens said to their representatives, this infrastructure is for us as citizens. It's not for Democrats, it's not for Republicans, it's for citizens. And so some of them, they have to do that, and majority of them have to agree, and that infrastructure bill was passed. It wasn't passed for Biden, it was passed for the American society. That's what the African society will be talking about. If a man makes a suggestion that will better the country, why not take that and use it for the betterment of the country instead of thinking the person as a terrorist or the person as an enemy of the nation?
State, yeah.
When he's talking about you, you are not turning to a state. You are not making other people feel that this person is bad. Again, the information are even distorted. But when it's being reported, you're not reporting what the person actually said some of the time. You are reporting what you think will make the people get angry with the person.
Wow, quite interesting. But some are saying that opposition in Africa, they are destructive in nature, in the sense that if you allow them to thrive, they may just eventually mobilize the people to topple the government or to lead to total political instability in a particular country where they are given the opportunity to thrive. What are your views on this?
To me, that is an escapist route. You see, people know when they benefit. If you go to a community, for instance, and you give them either a road or something to improve their economy, will they turn against you? They will not. Somebody else come and tell you, this person is not good. Say, look, it's not good, but he gave us a road. It's not good, but he gave us this. It's not good, but our children can go to school. Nobody is going to rise up against you. It is when your policies and your ideas are anti-people, and you think that that's what the people need. Africans believe that they know, African leaders believe that they know what everybody needs. So they go, you get to a community where there's no light, where there's nothing, you're going to put one, maybe hospital. Build a building and call it hospital, where there's no access to the road to the place, there's no light for the people to work, there's no staff, and you say, I've done something for the people. You are not asking people, what do you need? People know what they need. If you ask them, they tell you, you do what they need, they will forever remain and remember and grateful to you. And they will say it to generations yet unborn. So it is when a man is not good in himself that he begins to. My grandmother said it is when a man is lazy that he blames tools as the reason why he's not succeeding. Because you were supposed to manage those tools to succeed. Not the tools managing you. And that's why the African leaders are today. We are not allowing ideas and people to help us get to where we are going. But out of pride, we are digging ourselves into a hole. And we are thinking, oh, when anybody talks, is the reason why I didn't succeed. It's not the reason why I didn't succeed. You are the reason why you didn't succeed. And you should begin to look back into yourself and find out why you are not succeeding.
All right, thank you so much, Reverend. I appreciate a wonderful analysis. Let's see how all these will pan out. But is there an opportunity to appeal the judgment in this particular scenario before we call it a wrap on this show?
Well, I never say die. There's always an opportunity. But you have to ask yourself the question, what is the environmental influence between the executive and the judiciary? That's the point. So even if you say appeal, maybe it's the court of first instance that does the appeal. You can appeal to until you get to the Supreme Court. But sometimes in Africa, we know where the judgment is going.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Let's see how all these will pan out. Opposition in Africa, are they here to stay, or they are destined to be squashed by the rulership in each country in Africa. Raila Odinga also is trying to want to come out again for the presidency. He's been in opposition for quite a long time. You might have heard the retinues of names in Africa. They are strong opposition, giving the president of some countries in Africa real heat. And the president also, they are fighting back. In the case of Benin, some are saying this nailing the coffin, just put her there, let her just go and serve a gentile, so they can forget about politics and politicking. Is that the way out of opposition trying to have an interference or a say in governance? Only time will tell. Reverend, thank you once more. Appreciate your comment. By God's grace, tomorrow, International Forum. I'll see you then. Bye for now.
This is ITV. Certainly the best.